So Light of the Jedi is the first book that I read of the High Republic. Um, High Republic is, if you don't know, the High Republic is a new era that Star Wars and Disney and Lucasfilm are exploring through a series of books and comics, and I believe the TV show Acolyte is in the High Republic era, but near the end of it. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I would not be surprised if they made a movie or if they made TV shows about the High Republic era, but they're at least starting with books. So there's two books out. I have read one of them, and I believe there's a comic as well, and I have not read that either. But I have read this book, Light of the Jedi, by Charles Soule. And this segment is just my thoughts on it. So, an overall review, like, non spoiler, I would say it's a good book, especially if you want to know more about the Jedi as they were during that time. It is a bit, I don't know, the characters are a bit, I don't know, too good, I would say. Like, it's not super bad, but, like, the Republic hasn't had a war in so long, so everyone's super optimistic. Like, there's, like, no corruption, basically. The Jedi are peacekeepers. They're all, like, respectful of each other, respectful of people. And sure, people make mistakes, like, that's a thing, but it's almost a bit too good. But it makes sense considering the era of the High Republic. This is the Jedi at their peak. This is the Republic at its peak. So of course they're going to be good. And then there's the bad guys. They're just normal bad guys, I guess. They're like the only ones who aren't perfect, and they're kind of like the opposite of perfect. I mean, they're not super powerful, but like they're just very evil, I guess. So with that being said, I'm going to get into a spoiler review of this. So spoiler warning right now for those of you who want to read the book and haven't read it yet. So spoiler warning, go away now. You've been warned. So to start with, I have like 5 points I hastily wrote down right before hitting go live because I didn't really have time today or this week or whatever. But the first point I have right down is there's too many characters in this book. You've got like Avar Kriss, Buryaga, Loden Greatstorm, and I don't even remember half their names. There's a Duros, there's the Twi'lek's apprentice, there's some guy that was like an old master who was with them on the mission with Loden and his apprentice. I think there was another one. But the point is, there's a lot of Jedi to keep track of. There's also a lot of non-Jedi to keep track of. Well, maybe not a lot. There's also a bunch of non-Jedi to keep track of, in addition to all the Jedi to keep track of. So I don't remember people's names. Characters don't stick out as well. And the book was maybe not as interesting unless you're like a big Star Wars fan and enjoy the content like I am. So I guess too many characters is a potential problem with the book. I didn't see it as too much of a problem. I mean, it's holding the book back a bit, but it's still a good book in my opinion. The second thing I wrote down is it's a good insight into the Jedi. And I suppose this kind of blends with my next point. The Jedi are very noble in this. It's the High Republic, so the Jedi are at their peak. The Republic is at its peak, and they're exploring the Outer Rim. They're trying to unify it. They're spreading their light throughout the galaxy, and that's like the whole point of the book, I guess, is spreading the light of the Jedi. So like that's the whole point of the book. So you get a bunch of insight into the Jedi. Hello there, JDS523. How goes it? What did you think of or have you read The Light of the Jedi? And yes, I know you haven't, but yeah. What did you think of the cover art, I guess, since you haven't read the book? Yeah, so Light of the Jedi, good book. Insight into the Jedi, that's what I was talking about. One of the things that they cover a lot in this book is how the Jedi see the Force. For example, there's this one guy, I don't remember his name, I believe he's a Duros, I might be mistaking that, but he sees the Force as like an ocean, and it's like endlessly deep, and blah blah blah. And then there's Avar Chris, the person on the main cover, front and center, and she sees the Force as music. And then I don't remember what Buryaga, the Wookiee, sees the Force as. Probably a tree, is what I'm guessing. And then one guy sees it as fire, and like they all see it differently, I guess. And that's an interesting concept, but really what it just shows is that when you're a Jedi, you can kind of tell that the Force is like, I guess, very vast, and it's connecting everything. And like, even though they see it differently, it's all the same thing, and you can see that it's that same thing, which is this vast thing that connects everything. It surrounds and penetrates and binds together and all that stuff. So that's an interesting insight into the Force that I got from Light of the Jedi. Yeah, not much more to say about that point. The next point I want to bring up is the Nihil. The Nihil are kind of interesting. Like, okay, in this time period, because there's no Sith, because there's no major wars, coming up with a bad guy is probably one of the biggest problems they struggled with, just given the time period. And I think they did a good job given what they had. They can't really use Force sensitives, so they made this like group of just pirates, like, right? Like, what else are you gonna do? But they gave them this hyperspace thing, which kind of ties into my next point. Is the more you try and explain things like hyperspace, the more Star Wars just gets confusing and plot holes and all that stuff. So, like, okay, there are a lot of ways that you could theoretically weaponize hyperspace, and because you never see it in the original trilogy or the prequels, or as far as I know, all of Legends, people just assumed that it's just a thing that wouldn't happen, because if there's a way to weaponize something, most likely it's probably been like thought of before, if not done. And if it's something like hyperspace, where if you weaponize it, it's like super powerful, like hyperspace could just easily be weaponized, ramming ships into each other, especially with using like droids as pilots. You could do what you do in Light of the Jedi, where you basically just send a ship into hyperspace, have it break up, and then it like becomes like asteroids, like coming out of hyperspace and destroying entire planets. Like, that's a giant weapon for, like, say the Nile. Like, they have like no restraint when it comes to morality, and yet they don't use this hyperspace like tactics, I guess. So when you try and like, the more you use hyperspace, the more problems you have. So there are hyperspace problems, but like with how there's too many characters, I'm willing to look over that problem and just enjoy the story, and kind of just ignore whenever they do hyperspace things other than they get from point A to point B. I'm like not even going to try and explain it, because there's just like no way to explain it at this point after The Last Jedi and after Light of the Jedi. But oh well. It's still a good book with good characters, and I guess a good setting, I guess. The plot isn't super interesting, and it takes a while to get into it. I think that's because there's just too many characters. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good book. As for the Nile, like themselves, outside of the hyperspace thing, or actually, one more thing to talk about the hyperspace thing is the whole like hyperspace when it comes to how the Nile use it in the first place. Not like the accident, not the great disaster, I think they call it. But how the Nile like actually just go through hyperspace, like instead of through hyperlanes, through like, I guess, sideways through hyperlanes, or however they explain it. They're trying to explain hyperspace in the book, and it's like, well, you're in your own pocket dimension and blah 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 and blah blah blah. And I didn't really listen to it, because like I said, I'm not going to try and explain hyperspace. I'm not going to try and understand hyperspace. It's just something in the story that gets you from point A to point B. But then they can go like sideways through hyperspace, and again, it's like, well, I'm not really going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to let the story, I guess, work itself out. Which is kind of sad that I have to do that, but at the same time, like they needed the bad guy, and I guess that's what they came up with. I'm sure a lot of people really like the hyperspace stuff, but personally, I just have to ignore it because there's probably a million plot holes that you could dig into. Um, Again, outside of hyperspace, the Nile are pretty interesting. They've got like this lead guy, and he's underestimated at first, but he's actually pretty ruthless. And then there's the the Tempests, I think. I finished the book like last week, right before the stream, so I had already like chosen my topic for um, a solo review. Um, but so it's been a week since I read it, but I believe there's three people underneath the main leader. I believe they're called the Tempests, and they have like their own like fleets basically, and they're all just united by um, the the eye. And he's like supposed to represent the eye of the storm of the Nile. Um, and I forget his name. He's the main bad guy, and he has control of the paths. Like I said, there's a lot of characters, so I'm gonna do a lot of forgetting of names. Um, but yeah, the Eye of the Storm, the bad guy. I feel like I should remember his name. I know I remembered it a little bit earlier today, but anyways, that guy. If you read the book, you know who I'm talking about. I don't know. He's very interesting. He's very ruthless. Um, I like that he's like a descendant of the Lor-San-Tekka clan, or not the Lor-San-Tekka, the San-Tekka. That's very interesting. I love how they're tying in like that one random guy from The Force Awakens and bringing it back all the way to the Light of the Jedi or to the High Republic era, so you can kind of see where he came from and what his legacy is. And that's very interesting. Then there was this scientist guy. I don't know. I didn't really like his plotline very much because I feel like spending so much on that giant computer, like all your astromechs, that seems a bit unbelievable. Um, but it was actually pretty cool to see that like the Jedi they made it like rain by like uh, basically airbending, I guess. Um, which was a cool scene. I thought they were gonna make it snow, but I guess rain is cool too. Um, yeah, but I don't know. He seemed just a bit boring, I guess, to me. I don't know. What did you think of that whole plot line? Then there's the Loden Greatstorm and his apprentice. I liked that plot line a lot. I think if I were a Jedi, I would see the Force very similar to the apprentice, um, and just see like from the perspective of the apprentice, seeing how amazing like the Jedi are, even though he's like an apprentice, or even though he's a Jedi, he's still an apprentice, so he can be amazed when his master does cool stuff, and that allows the reader to also feel that and also be amazed. And also, Loden Greatstorm is just pretty cool. So I liked that whole storyline. Avar Chris and again, I think it's a Duros, but I'm not certain about that. Avar Chris and her friend person, that's a cool plot line. I'm actually hoping they do more on that, because I love seeing like I don't know, just the Jedi struggling to be Jedi, I guess. I don't know. I feel like there was some good writing there, and they could do a lot more with that. I don't know. What is Buryaga? What did I think of him? I don't know. Buryaga seemed a bit like he's just a Wookiee Jedi, I guess. Um, and he's just an apprentice, so I guess it makes sense. What other plot lines were there? I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm missing one. It's probably just the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about just like the whole setting of it and all of the like stuff they have in the Republic. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Jedi ship, the Vectors. That's pretty cool. They called it Vector, and every time they would maybe okay, not every time. The first like 5 times they like named it, like mentioned the ship, I was thinking like literally the word Vector, and I was just a bit confused. But after that, it's just a cool name for a ship, and it really gives the idea of like a nimble ship with very minimal controls, which lines up pretty well with the later ships that the Jedi have, like during the Clone or not during the Clone Wars, like before the Clone Wars, like in Episode 2. So it lines up pretty well with those ships, which I like. Then there's the Republic, and they're like only in the mid rim and the core worlds, which I love that. I love that the outer, like you're exploring the outer rim during the High Republic. That's a cool concept to me. Um, the lightsabers, I guess, are just normal. Uh, what else is there? They're Jedi robes, like all over the covers. It's like all yellow, but then in the book, it's like, oh, they were wearing ceremonial robes because they were going to like dedicate the Starlight Beacon, but really they just wear normal stuff. Um, which I don't know. I guess I don't like that as much because I kind of wish that well, one of two options. You could go the normal route and just say, don't put the flashy robes on the cover and just have the normal robes on the cover. Or you could go the other route and say, hey, the flashy robes are a good idea because they show the prosperity and pride of the Jedi Order of the time. Um, yeah, I don't know. So it's just, I think they should have gone one way or the other rather than like having all the yellowy robes all over the cover art, but then when you actually get into the story, they like take them off after the first mission. Um, yeah, so that's about the like the Republic. I guess it's just kind of the same. There's not too much to talk about in this book, at least not yet. I feel like as the like High Republic era gets more fleshed out, then this book might seem like have more significance. Um, you could talk about how it plays into like the other books, but for now it's just kind of an introduction into the world. And I think it's a good introduction. I haven't read the other one, but I think if you were going to kind of like introduce yourself into this world, like I don't know. Okay, on the one hand, there's a lot of characters. Uh, well, I suppose this is the entire problem. There's a lot of characters, so you're introducing yourself to a wide range of this world. So you're kind of just getting a feel for this, like in the state of the galaxy at this point. But at the same time, with so many characters, it can be overwhelming if you're not used to the era. So for someone like me, I like reading this book. I think this is a good introduction to the era. But for other people, I guess they might want like a more focused introduction and really get pulled into the characters, like a specific main character or maybe a few main characters, rather than like the dozen or half a dozen or however many characters we got. Um, but yeah, another thing that I noticed, something that I didn't really like, but again, I kind of just got over it because it's not too big. It's not too big of a problem. Is the voice actor would sometimes like use a kind of strange voice for characters, kind of like a Goofy or a Jar Jar type voice, um, rather than just like a normal voice. But I don't know. Maybe it doesn't bother people as much, but it bothered me a bit, and I kind of didn't like that. But it's fine. It's still a good book. And if you're reading it like the paper version or even an online version, if you're like literally reading it rather than what I do is listening to it, um, then yeah, that won't bother you at all. But for me, at least, it was a little bit awkward at times. But for the most part, this was a good book. Uh, I don't know. I think it just had good to solid writing, even if like the story itself wasn't super good. It was kind of all over the place. It has a lot of reliance on hyperspace, which often leads to plot holes. And I'm pretty sure if I dug deep into the story, I would find yes, there's a lot of plot holes. The characters aren't super interesting, but it's written in a way that it's written very well. So it's still a good read. It's very I don't know, a satisfying book to read. And I think it's a good introduction into the High Republic era. So that's my thoughts on the High Republic. What do you think of the High Republic? And specifically, what do you think of Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule?